Hello there, I am the guy, a new YouTuber who has absolutely no idea what he's doing because this is his first video. Yeah, this video is kind of a test, pilot, rough draft, you name it, that will also hopefully entertain you in the process. So, as my debut, I will be listing 10 movies that I believe have the best endings. I know that I just said movies and it's in the title of the video, but number one is a TV show, so don't send me hate in the comments. Anyways, let me get out of the way what I mean by ending. The ending of a movie is split into two parts, which I will define here. First is the ending sequence, commonly referred to as the climax. This is the action that ends the movie. When the villain is slain, the big explosion happens, everything in the movie has been building up to plays out. Then there's a wrap up, in which we see things go back to normal, the protagonist and the girl kiss, and sometimes the next movie is set up. You know what I'm talking about. For the sake of getting as good a result as possible, both things will be part of my calculation to judging this list. Before I begin, if you could like the video and subscribe, it would mean a lot to me as a nerdy middle schooler using his computer to rant about his opinions on movies. Also, I will be using a lot of movie clips, but I make no claim to ownership of them and list who I give credit to the movies at the end of the video. By the way, I just did it so I don't get copyright strike. Also, there are spoilers, so proceed with caution. Number 10, Lord of the Rings The Two Towers. Now, for the record, this movie is still awesome all the way through, but I'll talk about why its ending is noteworthy. The Battle of Helm's Deep is incredibly epic and one of the best depictions of fantasy warfare. Gandalf's charge at the end is Oscar, Emmy, and Golden Globe worthy all at once. Frodo and the Nazgul is heart-pounding, Sam's speech about adventures is incredibly inspiring, the giant waterfall at Isengard is incredibly memorable, and kind of the barren of giant waterfalls ending good movies. Overall, incredible. Number 9, 007's Moonraker. Don't get me wrong, all the endings to James Bond movies are great, and there's probably a million more of them that I could and probably should have put in this spot. But here's the issue with them. When your movie is packed to the gills with awesome fights and action, and a long series of similar movies, your endings eventually become harder and harder to make impressive. But somehow Moonraker can pull off it, making its ending somehow even more impressive than the meat of it. For one thing, it's in space, and we can all agree space is cool. Heck, two of the other movies on this list take place in space. Yeah, they're nice. So we know that it's unique in the 007 universe already. The MI6 agents, instead of using traditional guns, use laser guns, which bring me back to the Space Invaders game I loved as a kid, although it makes no sense. The villain's death is the second most gruesome one in the James Bond series. I'll leave you guys to try and find number one in the comments. And in the end, James must shoot canisters of nerve gas that can kill hundreds of millions of people in one go. We're not talking about drug dealing or illegally converting solar energy into nuclear energy. We're talking about Armageddon, making it even more intense. Easily deserves this number 9 spot. Number 8, Jurassic World. Once again, you may be scratching your head over why I chose this over any of its prequels or sequels. Well, let me knock them out one by one. The original JP, The Lost World, and the new one, Dominion, overall a bit too loyal to its adaptation from Michael Crichton's books and like to really stretch and drag their feet in the climax. Like, really, it hurts my brain with everyone at a different place at the same time and it's constantly alternating. It's a mess. And also, I recently read his book Timeline, and it's just non-stop for the final 2 pages. Anyways, getting back on track, JP3 is nothing special compared to any of the other movies' climaxes, and Fallen Kingdom is just bland. And here's some more evidence. It's the one part of the movie that isn't heck bent on nostalgia, and there is a ton of this nostalgia in this movie. Almost like there is a cow of nostalgia they could milk. Anyways, it includes some classic tropes from all good movie endings. When the protagonist dying, in quotation marks, and coming back to life, near defeat, Deus Ex Machina, and best of all, it's with dinosaurs. And Ron Howard's daughter runs full speed in high heels, which is hysterical. And after the action, it's pretty wrap-uppy and satisfying. The kid's parents don't get a divorce, which is always nice. We get one more morsel of nostalgia in which the T-Rex triumphantly roars, symbolizing the end of the movie. 10 out of 10. Number 7, Aliens. This is the first one I believe everyone will agree with me on because it goes from death chase to a bunch of events to finding one of the side protagonists in an exploding factory to Mecha Robot versus Queen Xenomorph duel. But for the sake of keeping this movie's rant from being 5 minutes long, let's just talk about the Queen Xenomorph fight. It begins with one of the goriest visual effects I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, heck, Bishop gets split in two. Then, even though new in the vents, again, is kind of weak, it's still hard pounding levels of intense. Then the robot suit thing is obviously cool, from the noise of the way it moves to Ripley's line that I swear J.K. Rowling stole. It's just, ah! The way the camera does the mostly extreme close-ups, that's what those shots are called. I didn't make that up. Makes it all the better and more climatic. Also, once again, a very satisfactory and nice ending. I mean, since there is a third movie, we all know it's a giant lie, but we can enjoy it for now. S tier. Number 6, Star Wars: A New Hope. Now you know what I'm talking about, your parents know what I'm talking about, your fourth cousin's best friend's aunt's former roommate's brother knows. I'm talking about the trench run. I mean, come on, how can you not enjoy this? It's incredibly intense, uses the constantly changing shot effect to make you sweat. The way I imagine the voice of the little man everyone talks about as Obi-Wan's voice from the scene. The final blow to the Death Star's core is incredibly intense, and the way the Death Star blows up is kind of pretty, actually. And I've talked about other movies' wrap-ups, but Luke and Han receiving their medals, I don't know what they're called, is the first wrap-up that is, actually well made and noteworthy, even though, like with Aliens, it is a lie because of the next movie, but it is still amazing. No wonder it was the highest grossing movie ever for a bit there. Number 5, Home Alone. Moving on to a movie with an upbeat tone, Home Alone's ending has earned itself a bit of a trope, and is the embodiment of every prank our cousins, brothers, sisters, and cool uncles have pulled on us ever. I mean, come on, setting up toy cars so people can slip on them. If you didn't experience this as a kid, I feel bad for you. Anyways, on to the boring movie talk. This is also a bit of an amazing feat from a filmmaker standpoint, as it is one of the climaxes that can balance intensity and humor, because Harry and Marv's screams and the way that Kevin tortures them is absolutely hysterical. This is the first one where I spend more time talking about the wrap-up instead of the climax, but this ending really does deserve my jabber-jawing. There's John Candy, not to mention one, but two redemption arcs, once again humor, and a reunited family, which is the most I could really ask out of a movie nobody wanted to invest in. Fun fact, yeah, nobody wanted to spend over $10 million on it, while it really called for $14.7 million. Watch Netflix's The Movie That Made Us for more info. Going back to the point, everything made about this movie is beautiful and a wholesome wrap-up of arguably the best Christmas film ever made. Number 4, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. There's so many things I could say about this, like how there's 2 R-rated James Cameron films on this list, or how we went from a fun family movie to a serious sci-fi flick. I'm not going to, because the script for this episode is already over 1,400 words. So anyways, the ending of the second Terminator begins with the T-1000 being frozen to sub-zero temperatures via a liquid nitrogen tanker splitting, getting shot and splitting into a million pieces, getting revived by the frozen particles melting, killing the T-800, interrogating Sarah, pretending to be Sarah. The T-800 is revived and shoots the T-1000 with a grenade launcher, and then it burns in lava. All this is the definition of a good action film. Empty factory, one of the protagonists fake dying, impersonating the bad guy wriggling around in pain as he/she, or in this case it, as it dies. Now on to the wrap-up. It is really, 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 really incredibly sad. Like, it is one of the first instances a movie legitimately made me cry, but I guess that means the T-800 was a well-designed character, which is a key ingredient in a good movie. While Sarah's speech about hope at the end is kind of dry, and got this movie doctor rank, it still represents Sarah letting go of her mortal fear of Terminators, which is always important, because every good movie needs a moral. Also, it is massive foreshadowing to the new movie, so that is good and bad. This film is overall sick. Number 3, Back to the Future. This movie is a master of the psychological effect of constantly changing shots to create intensity, and is one of the reasons this film is so high up on the list. Also, it is a master of what I call the clutch effect, because I play too many video games, which is when a character in a film must do something at the exact right second perfectly, or else the movie doesn't have a happy ending, I guess. Back to the Future's ending kind of abuses this, but in a good way. When Doc Brown's trouble connecting the wires to the whole thing with the car not working, and having it hit the wire connecting to the pole at the exact right time, or else he's stuck in 1955 forever. The music by Alan Silvestri is wonderfully done, getting louder as the scene goes by, so it's kind of having the rhythm match the scene. Watch very closely, you'll see it eventually. And finally, for the climax, the special effect of the DeLorean going back is insane, combined with the lightning. It's honestly the best use of special effects in the entire Back to the Future series, not just the first one. Now on to the wrap-up. It is somehow better than most back-to-normal scenes, probably because, well, Marty's life is 10 times better. His father is a successful author, his brother's no longer working some fast food job, his sister is deep in the dating game, he's had the truck he's always wanted, and his mother's medical state is better. It's a satisfying of satisfying. The only thing that would have made it better is actual music, because there's none in the scene for some reason, which knocked this film from spot 2 to spot 3. And about the setup of the next movie, I'd be mad, but I like that it sets the precedent that there is a next movie and the studio is gonna do it for sure instead of, oh, this movie was successful, let's milk 2 more movies out of it for money. And also Christopher Lloyd's role is a gem, so it's nice to see him go on his scientific jibber jabber one last time. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. This is probably the first and only movie on this list that's actually known for its ending and is constantly made fun of for being long. But now, as we enter the number 2 spot of this list that nobody's gonna care about anyways, I will explain why the ending of this movie is incredible. One thing, it pulls off something other movies' endings could only dream of. Having an ending be long but not boring or annoying. Final climb up Mount Doom is heart pounding. Gollum's reappearance is kinda scary. Frodo's corruption is the kind of betrayal thing that makes endings like these juicy. The Battle of Mordor is everything we loved about the Battle of Five Armies from the Hobbit, and then some. Mount Doom blowing up is one heck of a feisty way to end a series, and Frodo's line
It's good.
is gorgeous and honestly a great line to use for any of these movies' endings. Now for the wrap up. Ooh boy. Just a super quick version of everything that happens at the end. Aragorn takes back the throne of Gondor. Sam marries that one hobbit girl from the beginning of the series. I forgot her name. Frodo finishes writing the book version of The Lord of the Rings and decides to abandon the Shire and live in the Grey Havens. Everyone hugged last time. Sam goes back to his hobbit hole and says, "I'm back," and the screen flames fades to black and credits roll. But when your series is 9 hours long, over 11 hours if you're watching the extended edition, it requires that if you want your film to have a satisfying ending. And the music is beautifully orchestrated. There's one final laugh as Sam makes Frodo the ring bearer at his wedding. Lol. And it is also because of how well it is done that it has earned a reputation for its ending. That is why it is so high up on this list. Also, I didn't have any better alternatives except for my number 1 spot, so there's that. Before I go on, I'd like to list 3 honorable mentions that were considered for this list, and a brief explanation of why they're great. Honorable mention number 1, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This climax is honestly incredible because just look at it. It's practically hypnotizing me as I watch it. It's great symbology for little people doing the previously believed impossible, and in the end, it has the most basic yet somehow memorable ending any movie can have. Everyone going home and having their lives normal again. Honorable mention number 2, Up. It has something that makes number 1 so good, hint hint, and the fact that the whole thing takes place on top of a blimp has the intensity with the fact that if you fall, it's not like there's ground within 10 feet of you. If you fall, that's the last thing you'll ever do. And the wrap up is kind of like the last ones. Everyone goes back to their lives, Russell and Carl becomes friends, and the spirit of adventure is parked above an ice cream shop. That sounds weird when I say it out loud. Honorable mention number 3, Jaws. This ending is a master of the clutch effect I talked about with Back to the Future, as well as visibly seeing Brody's anger that is built up over the course of the movie finally being taken out on Bruce the Shark. That's his name. Steven Spielberg named it after his lawyer. And the wrap up is kind of bland, but the music is so good. I get the sand effect and get filled with determination every time I hear it. And number 1 is, drumroll please, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Before we begin my explanation, I want to say that this show is ending as a 4-part episode, but to keep the script from going over the 3,000 word mark, I'll just do the final one, and it was also the only one I had taken into consideration for my calculation. Now I begin the rant. This show was great all the way through because its ending stands out as a shining beacon of everything I talked about that makes the other movies' endings great. As the epic showdown feature of Jurassic World and Jaws, the "if you screw up, you die" effect from Up, Chivalry, which is sadly not on this list anywhere else, the clutch effect from Jaws and Back to the Future, the whole mass destruction thing from most of the movies on this list, the incredibly fitting music, like every movie on this list. The beam up at the end is admittedly kind of cliche, but every one of these endings has something cliche. And I forgot to mention this with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but it has an effect with one side having an unbelievable amount of power, making the fight to the death even more climatic. Now for the wrap-up. I do feel it was a bit rushed, but it has everything it really needs. Zuko on the rightful place on the throne, Return of the King, everyone at peace for the first time in century, and one final laugh as Sokol makes an incredibly awful drawing of the gang. Now I'm gonna do a whole thing for these few final shots. Now, if you know me personally, you may know that the one glaring flaw I believe plagues this entire show is how it abuses romance plot fillers, because it does. But this final shot kind of deserves it, between it being the end of the series, the beautiful landscape of Bossing Say, music. It's just a pretty sight, and the show deserved this. Great show, Nickelodeon. I know you only sponsored it, but good job, still. Thanks for watching. I sadly went over the 3,000 word mark, so I guess there's no use stopping me now. Do you agree with me on these? Are there any films I missed that you think belong in this list? Let me know in the comments. And this is my first video, and I need a catchphrase, so what do I say? Have an adroit day, eat your Hot Pockets. Oh, I got it. My blanket is red, the Yankee t shirt is blue, and if you made it this far, I sincerely thank you. Go in peace.